The participation trophy generation can't make up its mind. First, it was Social Security is too expensive, work longer. Then it was retire already. You're blocking the high paying jobs. Now it's why are you spending our inheritance? We deserve your home more than you do. Pick a lane.
Hand over the goods, old fogies.
Yeah, what's the holdup? We want our slice.
Just like you, I've worked 40 plus years and paid into a system that's been wrecked for decades by politicians from both parties. But now, suddenly, boomers and Gen Xers moving into retirement are the problem. I'm older than some, younger than others. And like many of you, I got up every morning, went to work for decades, paying taxes, paying into Social Security. Not once was I ever asked, hey, do you want to stop contributing to a program politicians will continue to mismanage? No, never happened. Welcome, everybody. I'm Doug, and this is Dying to Retire. And today we're going to talk about how I keep seeing the same people online, people from the Participation Trophy Fellowship, the generation, crying like they want their mamas to kiss their scraped knees, screaming, boomers are draining the systems. You guys ruined everything. You guys are greedy. Well, and by the way, when I say boomers, anyone over 50 is being classified as a boomer in their optics. So they're mad at you too, Gen X, especially you older farts. While they were out in deep left field digging for gold and getting a T-ball participation trophy, we were working through recessions, inflation spikes. For those a little older than me, 20% mortgage rates that required 20% down. So today, I'm returning fire by providing a bit of a school of hard knocks, a 5-point history lesson that they either didn't get in school or more likely they were on their smartphones and weren't paying attention. So let's break this down Barney style. You know, you love me, I love you. So they say if you have a house, savings, a pension, a 401, or whatever investments, you shouldn't get Social Security. So let's put it another way. If I paid for car insurance for 50 years, never made a claim, then the car gets totaled. The insurance company doesn't suddenly take the position, well, you have money in the bank, so we're not going to pay you. No, that's not how the shit works. You would be pissed. And you definitely would not sit back and let it happen. The same goes for Social Security. We finance the program with our labor, no matter how poorly run. It was something we earned. It was insurance. And like most Americans who paid into it, I will never see a proper return on what I paid for. One example being pushed on social media today by these trophy recipients is the story of a married couple, both doctors, both high earners all their lives, who have delayed taking Social Security until they turn 70, which is, I think, this year. The reason is that they saved and lived within their means all their lives and worked well past 67. But these trophy heads, these fellowship experts, these disinformationists sell this couple's decision and situation as if it were typical for the majority of Social Security recipients. We wish. But no, they purposely omit the statistic that only 8 to 10% of retirees wait until the age of 70 to take their Social Security. So, yes, their checks will be higher than the rest, especially those who take it at 67. But here are the numbers that they're throwing out there. Yes, they will get $116,000 yearly, but that is combined. And by the way, they sell that number, the amount, as if that's what each individual would receive. That's how they do their article. But in reality, each of them would only receive a little over $4,800. And these are the high end of the example. So out of that 8 to 10%, this is a very small amount. But here's the kicker, which these disinformationists love to leave out. If one of them dies, the other, that check goes away and you morph up to whichever one is higher. No one inherits that money that they didn't pull back out. It just goes back into the Social Security pool. And here's the rest of the story. In the reality, the ground truth they don't want you to hear. Do you know what the average life expectancy of a white male is today? It is 75. So that man who retired at 70, do the math. On average, he's going to die in 5 years. Do you really think he's going to get back what he put in with interest? But apparently, we're the ones mooching. So, Junior, go ahead. Keep telling yourself that while sipping your $20 lattes and doom scrolling on something we actually built. And here's where their story gets a little incoherent. Then there's this myth, and no clue where it comes from other than just plain envy or whatever, that we boomers and early Gen Xers are sitting on top of all the jobs, hoarding them. looking down from the top of the mountain like we're a dragon from the Lord of the Rings. But here's the truth: if we're still working in our late 60s, 70s, or 80s, most of the time, for most of us, it's not because we're bored. We're purposely blocking the youth from rising to the top. It's because shit is expensive. What you call expensive, we also call expensive. Pensions have all but disappeared. Our retirement accounts have crashed multiple times over the years. Stock goes up, but also comes crashing down. And we're the ones who hurt the most when it does. Healthcare costs are also out of hand, and that's where there's so much medical tourism. A refrigerator that used to last 20 years now dies faster than a TikTok trend or a Kardashian's chastity. Most of the participation trophy generation is oblivious to the number of times boomers and Gen Xers had to reinvent themselves during their lifetimes. We've also lived through economic and global shifts, outsourcing, globalization, NAFTA. Other than the automobile industry, manufacturing jobs in the US have all but disappeared. Then our government, very own elected officials, had the great idea of bringing in wave after wave of replacement workers. And they've also championed the offshoring of technical jobs and pretty much everything now. And those actions are hurting the workforce still today. Wages stagnated, the cost of living has skyrocketed for all generations. And yet, we still managed to raise families and support our kids longer than any generation before us have. Many paid their kids' college tuitions, bought their first cars, sometimes even second car, and even adult living expenses. So be honest, how many of you guys are still paying for your kid's cell phone? They're on your family plan or they're on your car insurance plan. The only bad thing is that by trying to give our kids everything we didn't have, we actually created this trophy generation. So yeah, that shit's on us. But they're adults now, most of them, so they need to adult. Just like when you started in the workforce, we benefited from older, more experienced coworkers. While much of the new generation ask a lot of good questions, they often don't live in reality, workplace reality. One of my favorite quotes, besides Napoleon's never interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake, and this quote perfectly sums up what older workers, older generations have tried to pass down to younger generations since most likely the dawn of time. And it's from psychologist Christopher Peterson. And it goes, if you never venture outside the box, you will probably not be creative. But if you never get inside the box, you will certainly be stupid. And that brings to the part that most of the participation trophy generation doesn't want to hear. Short story long, this generation of participation trophy winners wants to start at the finish line because they don't see nor want to see all the work the generations before them had to put in to get to where they are today. My wife and I were talking about this recently. When we first got together over 30 years ago, we both had full time jobs, 40 hours a week plus occasional overtime. But we also had 1 to 2 part time jobs for years. It wasn't just for a summer or two, it was for years. She still initially lived with her parents. I lived with a roommate. And I have to say, some won't like it unless you're a manager or better yet, a regional manager. That job at Starbucks is not supposed to provide you the same standard of living, nice house or apartment that a plumber makes or electrician or office worker or a small businessman who've worked in the workforce for 40 plus years. But that's where we are today. Many are demanding to start at the finish line. The next part, they've never learned it or they just ignored it. The participation trophy, in my optics, likes to blame the older generations for every decisions politicians have ever made over the years, from corruption to wars to open borders to outsourcing our jobs. I know it's hard for many of today's generation to understand, but boomers and most Gen Xers didn't have direct access to their elected representatives like we do today. The only time we ever saw them was on the nightly news or at election time when they were walking around trying to say, hey, let's go kiss the baby, because we want to show that we're just like you, just like all the other hardworking, honest Americans. It was bullshit then, it's bullshit now. These participation trophies nowadays can easily fire off angry emails or jump on Twitter feeds to voice their disappointment on this or that subject. What could we do? Well, we had the opportunity to send a handwritten, strongly worded letter, and most of us didn't have typewriters, manual or electric, couldn't afford them. Can you imagine today's generation trying to type on a vintage Royale or Smith Corona manual typewriter? No spell check, no autocorrect. You think cursive messes them up. Wait until they find out what carbon copy really was meant for back then. But I digress. It's not like when we went into the voting booth and there was an option, none of the above. In fact, half the time, we didn't even know what our politicians were doing in DC, except when they showed up on 60 Minutes, and that wasn't a good thing. Yeah, we had this cool Schoolhouse Rock jingle, but most people didn't know what was in the bill. It wasn't always publicized. There was no C-SPAN. At most, we were just told the bill's cool sounding name. And just like today, the bill did the exact opposite of what its name implied, like the Affordable Care Act, which it isn't. Nowadays, when newer generations sees a meme, they're suddenly experts in geopolitics. And this last part frustrates me the most. I do not remember anyone I went to school with, served with, or worked with who said anything remotely like what I'm hearing today. I can't wait for my parents to die so I can get their stuff. Or about a neighbor old widow living down the street, still living in the big house that they raised all their kids in. No one back then ever said remotely, that's a big house. She doesn't deserve it. They need to give it to me. Never. But that's what we're hearing and seeing on social media and some news channels today, primarily from the participation trophy generation. They've even come up with some nonsensical sayings for those retirees who own property, have savings, retire, have Social Security and retirement. They call it total boomer luxury communism. And the guy, I think it's sourced back to, he presents himself as a libertarian, pro capitalist, pro conservative voice of reason, almost an enlightened savior, the second coming of Christ. But there's a lot more to that story. He actually belongs to different groups and fellowships that are fall under an umbrella of organizations, a group that actually pushed for all of those things that have caused our issues, from the importing of foreign workers, unfettered illegal immigration, outsourcing and stuff. So do your research and look into these guys. But that's the playbook he's using. It's straight out of Mao's Four Olds campaign. Let's push out the old ideas, the old culture, the old customs, the old habits. Anything that was suspected of being feudal bourgeoisie was to be destroyed. And the result? Violence, persecution, and a whole lot of dead people. And with that in mind, remember how we treated our grandparents and later our parents when they retired? We didn't show up with torches demanding their pensions, their homes, and savings and Social Security. But that's what these people are pushing for to be the new policy. But guess what? Just like the generations before us, we too have earned the right to keep our homes, savings, and what was taken needs to be returned to us as promised, the insurance. The boomers and early Gen Xers nearing retirement are not asking for special treatment, far from it. What they are asking for is for what was promised, what was paid in advance, a federal version of layaway. We didn't get participation trophies, but we did earn our retirements. If they can't handle it, they're just going to have to be uncomfortable. If you found value in this episode, please hit the like button and subscribe. Drop your thoughts below. What are your thoughts on this subject? Have you ever been told directly or indirectly that you're too greedy, you're spending your retirement money, it's meant for them, not you? Do you own a big house that you and your wife still lives in and you need to give it to them? Have you ever been told this? I read every one. As always, I'm Doug. This is Dying to Retire, and I'll see you on the next episode.
Hoarding.